What is up, guys? It's Aaron, and today we're going to be moving on with the second part of our Building with React series. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is setting up our environment to start coding with React and going over 2 of the basic React hooks that you're going to be working with a lot of the time. I would say most of the time, actually. So without any further ado, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is install Node.js onto your machine. I will leave a link in the description for what you should do with Windows. On Mac, we're just going to use Homebrew. If you don't have Homebrew installed, I'll put a link in the description for that as well. But basically what you want to do is just head on over here to the terminal, into the directory of choice. For Homebrew, it doesn't matter where you install Node.js because it'll just install it on your machine. But I'm going to be doing it in the directory where I'll be working anyway. So you just want to do brew install node, and this might take a while. And so when you're done with this step, come back, fix any errors that are happening with installing it, and then we'll move on with the next part. I'm not going to run it here because I just did, and it took quite a while to finish. So the only thing you're going to need to install to get started with programming with React is going to be Node. So once you have that, you want to head into the directory where you're going to be working. I'm going to be working in the React course directory in my development folder. And we're going to run npx create React app at latest, and then we're going to call it React hooks. Enter. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a new React app using the create React app template. This is maintained by Facebook, and it kind of just gives you all the files that you need to get started with a React project. So this step might take a while depending on your machine, your internet connection, things like that. So once you're done, come back to the video and we'll get started with some code. Okay, so as you can see here, the create React app script finished running, and what I'm going to do is cd into the React hooks directory, and then I'm going to run code dot, which is the VS Code command that allows you to open VS Code to any directory. If you don't have that installed, you can do Command Shift P when you have VS Code open, and I think right here it should say shell command, so it says install code command in path. So that's something I find really useful. So first things first, we're going to delete some things that we're not going to use today. That's going to be our robots.txt, app test.js, report web vitals, setup tests, and I think that should be it for now. So go ahead and delete those. And then in index.js, we're going to delete report web vitals, the import for it, and then the call to it, just because we're not working with these today. And then we're also going to get rid of these React strict mode tags. This is a feature of React that helps you with debugging and stuff, but we can go over that at a later date. I'm just going to remove it today because it makes it a bit simpler. So now that we have our app.js set up, let's start our development server and see if it's working. So we can run npm start, and then we can wait for that to load, and then go to our browser and type in localhost 3000. So if you did everything correctly so far, you should see the rotating React logo and this screen pretty much verbatim. So let's get started with our lesson for today in terms of React hooks. So first things first, we're going to delete this header, and you can delete the import for logo. And we're going to come down here and import useState from React. And then we're going to define a constant count, set count equals useState 0. Now, what does this mean? So the useState hook returns a pair of values. The first value, count, is going to be the stateful variable. So count is going to hold our count. We initialize it in useState to be 0. So what this basically means is that we are assigning our variable count to an initial state of 0, which is a number. Set count is what we call when we want to update this variable. I'll show you what I mean right here. So we're going to do an h3, and we're going to put these little curly braces with count inside, and then underneath that we're going to make a button where the onClick function is going to increment our count. So we're gonna set it to set count, count plus 1. And we're gonna name the button increment. So as you can see here, we have our count variable being displayed. And we also have our increment button. So now whenever we press increment, what do you think it's gonna do? Because we set our onClick button function here to increase the count by 1 each time we click, it's going to simply increase the count variable by 1 each time. So under the hood, what's happening is that every time we click this, React is re-rendering the component with whatever variable changed. So because count is the only variable that changed, we're only going to be changing the count variable. If we define another useState, text input, set text input, and then we'll make it something blank, a blank string. We can add in another H3 that has our text input, and then an input field where the type is text. And then we're going to set the onChange function to set the text input to whatever the current value is of our input field. You'll see what I mean in a second. So we're going to do onChange, curly brace, e, with an arrow function to do set text input, e.target.value. And what this just means is it's whatever value is currently in the text input field. Okay, so now we can increment our count freely, and then when we change the text input field, hello, this is a text input. And when we change this one, the count doesn't change, and when we change the count, the other one doesn't change, even though it's re-rendering the component each time. So what I mean when I say re-render is that when you call useState, you get two variables back. One is count, which is your stateful variable, and one is set count, which is you're changing the state function. And what happens is that when you call the change state function, it re-renders the component with only changing the variables that you mean to change. So like only changing count without affecting text input, even though we're technically re-rendering this entire thing. Yeah, so you can imagine how this is used to kind of get into React-like patterns. If you're using a to-do list app, or you're making a to-do list app, I should say, when a user enters what they want the to-do list app to be called, you take that as a state variable, and then you'd send it up to the database or local storage or whatever you're using, and then you save that state there. And then when you click that you've finished it, the to-do component has either a done or not done, true or false, whatever you want to call it, for whether or not you've clicked that you finished that task yet, right? And so basically, when somebody clicks that they finished that task, you change the state to true. It puts a check mark next to it using something like conditional render, which we'll get into later. And now I'm going to show you exactly what happens when we change the state using another React hook, which is called useEffect. So we go on over to our useState import, and we can import useEffect as well. And then underneath here, we're going to do a useEffect with an arrow function. And we're going to do console.log. This is the component rendering initio, right? And we have to put an empty dependency array because we want this to run whenever our component loads initially. This is kind of like a onComponent mount or onComponent did mount. I think it's called did component mount, something like that. And it basically, if you put an empty array here, it's going to run whenever the component initially renders. So now let's go over to our window, open our DevTools, and go to the console. So if we refresh the page, we say that this is the component rendering initially. So we've rendered the component the first time, and now what we're going to do is say, we're going to actually just copy it because it's a lot easier. we're going to do the same useEffect, except this is the count. This is the count variable being updated. And inside the dependency array, we're going to put our count function, or our count variable, excuse me. So now if we refresh the page, we see that when we set the initial state, the count variable is in fact being updated. And when we press increment, this is the count variable being updated as many times as we press increment, right? And so basically what this means is that, yes, our component rendered initially, and then we were re-rendering only the variables that changed, which is the beauty of React. It's only going to change what it needs to change. So it holds all the other state components static while you're changing that one, which is why it's a constant. And so now if you see we type in the text input, nothing is changing here because it's not an initial render and it's not changing count. Now what if we change this useEffect? We copy it down below and we put in text input. This is the text input variable being updated. So now if we clear T, so this is the text variable being updated, updated. You get the point. And so, yeah, so useEffect is something that's extremely useful if you want to do something like whenever somebody changes something on the screen in terms of like an input value or a counter, something like that. Maybe you want to reflect the change in a database. So you'd use something like a useEffect so that whenever that variable changes, you can call a function that makes a fetch request to your database and it says, hey, change this value, increment it by 1 because that's what my user did on his screen. If you have likes, maybe it's whenever somebody changes the like, you fire off a function that goes and it changes the likes, the number of likes in your database, something like that. For the useEffect that we use when the component initially renders, sometimes what people like to do in this is fetch data that they need for a specific screen. So if you're running something like you're displaying data or you're displaying a bunch of posts, when the component loads, you want to grab all those posts from your database so that you have them on the screen ready. And maybe you have something like const posts set posts equals useState with an empty array, right? And so after this, you would say when we initially load, we want to make a fetch whatever our database that we're fetching is. And then down here we can conditionally render something. Say we want it to be like posts.length is not equal to 0, question mark. So then if we use a ternary operator, we can say if it's true that it's not equal to 0, we can display the list of posts. So say we had a component called posts, and then we can do something like if not, we're going to say loading. We make this just a random div. We can say, we can give it an h1 and say posts. So if posts is 0, we're going to display this little loading thing here because that's what our initial state is and we never end up updating it, right? But then if we set it to something inside, it'll display posts. So that's what conditional rendering is. We're going to be using this a lot later in the course. As you can see, it's extremely useful because like if you make the fetch request to your database to get the posts, but it hasn't come back yet, you don't want to display a blank screen and you don't want to display no posts and then I'll update later. So what we can do in the useEffect is we can call it and say, oh, when there's no post in our current state, then we can display a loading. Maybe it's a symbol, a spinner, something like that. Maybe it's just text. And then as soon as it finishes, it'll update the state and make it so that we see our posts. Yeah, so that's gonna be it for this video. Please comment if this wasn't clear so I can make more videos about it. Maybe I can remake this video if too many people didn't understand what I was talking about, something like that. Sorry about the amount of time it took to put out this video. I've been pretty busy the past couple weeks. There's been a lot of apartment maintenance going on and things like that. But thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, and have a great day.